Dave Seymour. Welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Hey man, how are you, Ken? Thanks for having me, man.
Oh yeah, so good to see you. And I just did your intro, and it's pretty expansive, especially the last few years, and all the stuff in real estate and private
Yeah,
equity and flipping Boston. But I know you came from a little more humble beginnings than that, so I'm wondering if you can maybe give us the backstory that
yeah, for
got you to
sure.
where
No, I
we're at today.
appreciate it. Look, it's funny. Every time I do a podcast, I try to always think about, is there some value in a story, right? Storytelling is where all the magic is.
Sure.
And I, like you, have probably told my story 1,000 times, if not more. And the beautiful thing is my grandmother used to say to me, the truth is a beautiful thing, David, because it never changes.
Hmm.
So the story doesn't change, but we mature along the way. So look, I did have pretty humble beginnings. I grew up in the south of England, in a town called Andover in Hampshire, which was it was an overspill from London. Back in the late 60s, early 70s, the city of London was changing dramatically, and there was this mass exodus of Londoners moving to the countryside, where there
Yeah.
are cows and
Hmm.
sheep and little cottages
Hmm.
with straw thatched roofs. And but in comes this influx of working class blue collar Londoners, right? And
Yeah.
all they did was kind of damage the countryside and the culture. But if I look back at it, it was a blessing in the sense of we didn't know we were broke, Ken. To be
Yeah.
frank with you, man, give me a soccer ball and a bit of grass, and I was good to go.
Sure.
And we grew up in a pretty normal environment in that sense. It was what we call council housing back in England, which is probably the American equivalent of the projects, without the violence. There was the pubs and there were the pub fights and there were the challenges that every community has. But working class, brother, that's where it all started. Back in the south of England, with the waft of cow manure on the breeze at any time of the day or night.
I'm just thinking of the time frame too. It was I mean, it's the late 60s, you said, right? And
Yeah, I was born
so,
in '66. Yeah, so early
okay.
early '70s, late '70s was my time.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking like when everybody's moving out to the country, it's also at the same time that, you're post the British invasion, right? Like the Rolling
Yeah,
Stones and everything
yeah,
else. And so it's
yeah.
almost like a counterculture thing to do, right? To say like we're getting out of this and we're just gonna go live this more pure
Yeah.
life. So tell me about growing up there and what brought you to the States ultimately.
Yeah, look, it's a long story and we'll make it short, right? But I gotta be frank with you, man. I always had today I call it a dysfunction, but not in a negative sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never was content. I remember, those teenage years, teenage boy years, they're tough. My wife's trying to raise a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old son right now while dad's out, killing dinosaurs and bringing home the bacon. But I was never content, man. I was always in motion internally. And I moved around quite a bit from like 15. I was out of the house. I was done. I couldn't
When
I couldn't live by other people's rules. Go ahead.
Well, no, when you say not content with what? Like not content with
Wherever the heck I was,
yeah,
Ken.
just
I th-
life.
I think it's I think it's entrepreneurship. When I
Yeah.
look back at, I'm going to be 57 next week, and I look back at that and I go, no wonder you were a tyrant.
Right.
I didn't conform. I hated conformity. I hate injustice and I hate conformity, and they kind of go hand in hand for me. In the sense of the same old as we have over here in the States now. It's like,
Yeah.
how you doing, buddy? You all right, brother? Ah,
Yeah.
same old, another day, another dollar. It's because you're conforming, you miserable son of a gun. Get
Yeah.
off your ass and do something different. So I was always discontent in the sense of I always thought the grass was greener. I always thought the next girlfriend was going to fix me. The next job was going to fix me. What was going to fix me? And that took me to London, and I studied at a performing arts college in London. You had to audition to get into a performing arts college. Because for me, I was always happier trying to be somewhere else or be doing something else, right? It was a kind of like a driver for me. And I went to a performing arts college in London, and it's not a pretty thing or a pretty mental picture to see me in a ballet outfit doing man's leotard stuff. It wasn't good.
That
I'm
was
a
your
bulldog.
audition?
Kinda. You want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
So year one, so I'm drinking. I've been sober 33 years. So a little booze and drugs got into the mix along the way, right?
Yeah.
But I'm 18, 19, 20 years old in London. I'm studying at a performing arts college. And I had a ballet teacher, and she was Swedish. And it's my first ballet dance review. And I'm going to give you my best Swedish accent. She says to me, David, you try so very, very hard in your ballet. She says, but I must say to you, David, you must think more like a slinky fox and less like a beefy bison.
That's even better. That's even better with your South London, Boston, trying
Swedish,
to be a woman
French,
from Sweden. Yeah, that's a pretty good combo.
Dude, but it was like, that was a metaphor for my life.
Yeah.
Like everybody wanted me to be in
Something
line
else.
and smooth and fluent, and I'm like, no, man, if there's a round hole and I'm square, I want to jump into it and see how hard it is to break the mold. So
did that
from
turn
London,
itself?
go
Yeah.
ahead.
So back then, did that discontent? I mean, was it manifesting itself in like, were you getting in trouble? Were your grades in the tank? I mean, you got into a performing arts school. So,
look, yeah, for sure. Look, I just shared with you. I grew up in a culture where alcohol was a foundation for everything, right?
Sure.
Men drank, pubs. It's where we learned to chase ladies, to fight, to be a man, to be a working class, right? That's the environment I grew up in. But for me, with that discontent and that consistent drive for something different, right? I always wanted to be outside of me. Booze took me there. So, I was blessed with, and I don't mean this from any egotistical standpoint, Ken, don't get me wrong, but I was blessed with the ability to tell stories, to entertain, to have a presence, right? That's God-given. That's not me. And to get into that theater school, you had to audition. I was one out of 20,000 who wanted that place in that school that I was in. And, I ruined it. I lost it. I blew it, brother. After 1 year, the principal sits me down and he's like, David, you've got talent. You're going to do something. He said, I just don't know what it is. And you're not going to do it with us.
Yeah.
Because you cannot be on stage under the influence of anything and make up Shakespeare while you're trying to perform it to the people from the West End of London who knows every single nuance of Shakespeare inside out, back to front. And I'd be up there shattered.
That's frowned upon.
A little. Yea, verily, my Lord, saith I, go forth. Yea, forth, verily, yea. You know what I mean? I'm like a walking Monty Python character.
I mean, in the right venue, that could have paid off for sure. Now,
yeah.
So I'm also sober, not as long, but I'm curious. So what was you've been sober, it sounds like, since your early 20s then. So what was the catalyst
23.
for you? Okay. So what was the catalyst there to get sober?
Yeah. So my first wife was an American. I met her in London and she was on a teaching program from Indiana, but she was from New York. And, it's funny. It was an alcoholic decision. I'm 20 years old. Her visa was running out. I didn't want to give up the lovey time that I was getting with her. So it just seemed like a good idea at 20 to immigrate, get married, and join the United States Air Force. That was the plan. But I brought my alcoholism with me. And from 20 to 23, I drank with a vengeance. I had no restrictions. Even though I was married, it was my first wife, even though I was married. And the interesting thing, Ken, is she was a juvenile counselor. She was like a drug and alcohol counselor for juveniles, and there she is marrying me. So I should have seen the writing on the wall. But at the age of 23, with that marriage just being destroyed, my life being destroyed, I was contemplating things that are not God given. The gift of life. It didn't seem worth it anymore. And I walked into AA. I walked into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting there. At 23 years old, there were two guys standing at the door of this men's meeting. And guy says to me, he says, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, you don't ever have to drink again, kid, even if you want to. And I found that dysfunction or disconnect that I described at the beginning of our conversation. Christ, brother, I wasn't alone. I mean, what? If I was somebody who kept a diary, Ken, that would be the time where I'd say, come on, dude, you've been reading my diary, like my inner thoughts, the negatives, just the cloud. Here's how I summed it up. Guy said to me, he said, it's always 3 o'clock in the morning in the heart of an alcoholic.
Mm.
And that crushed me, dude. That crushed me. It was like that loneliness. Woof,
Yeah.
it chokes me up even all these years later. So, that was the start of the journey. And then God, look, it's God given for me today. I believe in a bigger power at play. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just here to try and get out of the way and serve him and serve the process. And maybe we touch somebody just by this podcast who says, hold on a minute. Those guys
Cool.
kind of talk like I feel, right? And you could
Yeah.
do a little different.
Was it
And the
smooth
journey's,
for you
go
because
ahead.
you're a young guy, you're raised with, again, drinking being part of your culture, being part
Yeah.
of like who you are.
Yeah.
You're also probably a little, I got to assume, uncomfortable in your own skin because you haven't really figured
Oh,
out how to. Yeah. So what'd you do in your early 20s not having your medicine anymore? Like how did early recovery go for you?
so that's an intense question, man, because you got to take me back. I was just with a very dear friend, a couple of years sober, out in the western part of the country, and it was a kind of business thing. But anyway, this guy's a couple of years sober. He's still messing around with a few other substances to keep his mental gymnastics intact. But I got to see the perpetual motion of somebody trying to get sober in early few years, and it just took me way back. For all of my my verbal acumen, my ability to be on a TV show, stand on a stage, educate, teach, motivate, all of those gifts that are given to me. My first 2 years of sobriety, brother, I'd have my back to the wall. It was like the fear of
Mm-hmm.
communication with anybody over
Mm-hmm.
anything
Mm-hmm.
destroyed me, dude. It absolutely destroyed me. I felt like I was 3 years, 4 years old. You
Right.
know, I had somebody the other day say I needed a drink to go to kindergarten. You know what I mean? Like
If it
when
was
somebody said that,
available, yeah, I
yeah,
get it.
like I identify with that. Like that resonated with me. And that's how early sobriety was. But the alternative for me was no longer an option, right?
Well, as
I,
I
I
look at where you were at, I mean, having just met you,
mm,
I didn't, I drank a lot through my whole life and I didn't stop until 6 years ago.
yeah,
And it's funny because whether you're 23 or whether you're 50,
yeah, yeah,
it's still, you still got to deal with whatever you've been hiding behind that, so I think it's
sure,
kind of a
sure,
gift sometimes when people find this
sure.
realization in their early 20s. Took me a lot longer, but I remember it was kind of funny. I had this moment where um, eventually I think we give stuff up out of extreme conflict or extreme consequence, right? Like if I keep
Yes.
doing this, I mean, you already knew like, hey, this
Yeah,
isn't going right, right? I'm having
yeah,
these thoughts of maybe not even wanting to
yeah,
be here or whatever. So I've got to change something. But for me, it was like, well, I'll give up the alcohol. When I do that, all of the stuff that the universe has been withholding from me, right? The deals I should be winning, the increases in sales, the relationships that are strained. Well, it's been withholding all those things. So those things should just naturally now, be delivered, right? Just they should rain upon me. And I was so pissed off, man. I was like, it just didn't work that way at all.
yeah.
I was just like a guy that still had all the same problems and wasn't drinking. So now I actually had to deal with my shit. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that and this is probably not a great advertisement for getting sober, but I think that's what getting sober does is it clears a pathway so that you can deal with your shit, but it doesn't
Yes.
do your shit for you. You know what I mean? Like you got to roll up your sleeves and do the work. And it sounds like you learned that lesson early in life.
So here's the thing, right? Resentments are the number one offender.
Oh yeah,
That's the number one thing that will take you back to a drink, a drug, back to the misery, back to the darkness, back to 3 o'clock in the morning. So
totally.
what's interesting about what you just said is, what's our favorite subject? Us.
Yeah.
What's my favorite thing to talk about? Me. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Me. The deals I didn't get, the deals I did get, the women I made love to, the women that got away, the me. Right? That's our
Right.
favorite subject. And we don't even live in California. Well, I don't know where you are, but anyway. What happened for me is I sat long enough to listen to enough men who had already carved a way for me. And I say this with love to every guy I know who's sober, was they weren't overly dynamic people. They weren't
Right.
front and center. They weren't big. You know what they were? They were trudging the happy road to destiny.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, for me, and I think also for you, was the tenacity of somebody who drank, and I'm going to make an assumption that you drank the way I did. The tenacity of the person who will go to those extra lengths for the relief, because that's all it is. We're just looking for relief. That tenacity, when turned into business, when turned into service, when turned into, a different direction, it becomes really powerful. And you
Yes.
can only manifest into the bright if you've taken care of the dark. Otherwise, who
Yes.
wants to carry that ball and chain? And to your
Exactly.
point, perfectly, this gentleman that I was with, a couple of years sober, he starts telling me a little bit of his activities during some of his better times, fully under the influence. And then he's asking me, should he go back to these people and apologize to them for his drunken actions? Now, this is a guy with no support. It's just me and him talking once every 6 months about this stuff, right? No support, no camaraderie, no fellowship, no tools in the toolbox. I said to him, look, man, you're a full-grown man just like I am, and I can't tell you what to do, but I strongly advise that you do not pull that scab off right now.
Right.
Even though it's giving you nightmares, they'll pull it off right now until you've got some salve to put on it, some new Band-Aids to put on it. How are you going to heal that wound? So it is. Look, and you know what? It doesn't go away either, Ken, right? So for me, it's a case of I can be an asshole at any moment in time if the circumstances are right.
Sure.
So it's awareness, it's persistence, it's tolerance. And my prayer is real simple. God, remove the bondage of self. Let me get out of my way so I can see your way. Let me do the best I can, because I'm going to fail miserably. Every single day I'm going to fail miserably, but I take glory in my little bits of success and wins,
Yeah.
sometimes in 5 minutes, sometimes in 5 months, but you just keep going, man. Just keep going no matter what.
Really cool. I remember I heard someone say, and it used to piss me off because I just wasn't there mentally yet to hear this, but when someone says, oh, I had the gift of recovery, I had the gift of my addiction, I'd be like, fuck you, like, but then I look at it now and I'm kind of the guy that says that, because here's the thing. Everybody is dealing with the human condition. Everybody's dealing with some level of bullshit. Maybe your level of bullshit, maybe your level of resentment, maybe your level of trauma isn't leading you to do drugs or to drink or something that's going to get you to recovery. And maybe you consider that a win. But if it's keeping you from addressing the things you need to address because you think everything's okay, then that's not a win at all. Right. And I think that's where people say the gift of addiction or the gift of recovery, because it's like, hey, if that didn't happen for you at the age of 23, you certainly would have gone on to do all the things you're doing now, right? It could have just been
without a doubt, without a doubt.
Yeah.
You say the gift of recovery. I go before that.
Yeah.
So I always talk about the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's the gift of desperation.
Yeah.
I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm either checking out or I'm checking in. Which way am I going to go? Right.
Yep.
And then, the pain, the joy, the laughs, the tears of, living inside this skin to the best of my ability and serving others every day. That's the gift of recovery, right? That's the gift of the journey. And look, the older I get, the more I realize it's all God-given for me, brother. It really is. I'm not the guy or I try not to be the guy who's like, look at me. Yeah. Ego, right? EGO, ease God out. That's what ego stands for. So I try not to be that guy. Yeah, I like to get a little dopamine hit when somebody says that was awesome. You inspired me, or that was a great deal. Thanks for the return.
Right.
Yeah, I get a little dopamine hit, but if I can keep my feet on this ground at this time, having this conversation with you, I tend to do better. And I think that's maturity. I hope, you know what I mean?
I think at a minimum, I had someone say to me once, and he actually might have said to someone else, and I was in the room, and it stuck with me. But it was somebody kind of taking credit for something. He said, "Hey, at a minimum, everything's at a minimum a co-creation." And it was
Oh, for
like,
sure. For sure.
yeah, like none of this is just me, right? And
Yeah.
whatever you whether you want to call it God or the universe or whatever, it's like
Yeah.
it's not just you. And the minute it is
Yeah.
just you, your world's gonna probably change pretty quick.
Sure it is. And we know who they are.
Yeah,
We know. And I got to be honest with you, man. I root for their failure.
I do too. I'm not proud of
I
that, but
do.
you
I'm
know,
not proud of it. I'm
yeah,
not proud of it. But you know why I root for their failure? Because I know that a lot of the messaging that's out there is so freaking hurtful to the
right,
uneducated, right?
right.
The masses, the sheep start sheeping, and the louder the noises get, whether it's in personal development, financial development, real estate, business, whether it's political, whether it's medical, the louder the noises are, the more the more will follow. And without going too deep with it, if you look back in our history, when those loud voices create mass movement,
Yeah.
it creates unbelievably horrible things because the mob will rule. So
Well,
I
and this is the
try,
part of you that
you
goes
know,
back to that justice. You said you were ruled
yeah,
by justice, and that's still
yeah,
in you, where you're like,
yeah,
it's one thing to just be an asshole, and affect
yeah,
you and maybe your immediate family. It's another
yeah,
thing to have a bullhorn and a
yeah,
platform where
yeah,
you are negatively impacting society or at least a
yeah.
big chunk of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here's my dig. Ready? You'll
Yeah.
never, ever, ever see me sitting somewhere with $1 million in cash, telling people that you can too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You'll never
Yeah.
see me getting on a private jet. You'll
Yeah.
never see me sitting in a Rolls Royce, telling the
Yeah.
whole world how cool I am, and you can be too.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude.
Not
It
your
rubs
vibe.
me the wrong way.
I don't
That's
like it
all.
either. It's
I
not my
don't like
thing either. It sells. I mean, there's enough people attracted to that sells. But I would start laughing in the middle of my posing by my car video.
it.
I
Oh,
think
can you
I'd just have a
imagine?
really hard
Can
time.
you imagine? I couldn't do it. You know what I mean? I couldn't do it. I don't know, but it's out there. I can't control the world. I just try and participate in it.
All right. So tell me, you're stateside now. You're
Yeah,
recovering. You got a marriage that failed, though. It sounds like, right?
yeah,
Approaching
yeah,
mid-20s now.
yeah.
What happens from there?
Look, I'm from 19. So I got sober in 86 to um. So I got sober in January 1986, 96. I look, I found my second wife.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way,
Yeah.
right? Part of the dysfunction is again that inability to be alone, right? The loneliness. So I met my second wife. We had a son together, Robert, who's now 28 years old, who's the love of my life. He's such a good kid. But during that period of time on my second marriage, I get the good government job, bro. I mean, there was a firefighter in my men's meetings, and I was taking a lot of police and fire exams, right? Again, like I like things to be right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he says to me, "Why don't you take the fire exam?" I'm like, I don't know if I want to be a firefighter. I'm watching cops every Saturday night. Bad boys, bad boys. So that's my thing, man. I'm going to go and protect and serve. And I took the fire exam. And on the day that a card came in the mail from the city of Lynn, Massachusetts, which is where I was living, I'd been accepted into the fire department. And that same week, I get a card from Miami PD because I'd gone down to Florida and tested down there as well. I get a card from Miami PD, and they said, "We'd like to offer you a position in our academy." So I was either going to go be a cop in Miami or a firefighter in Massachusetts. Those were my choices.
Wow.
And yeah, kind of crazy, right? And I already lived here. So, I started that journey. And I loved firefighting, Ken. I
Yeah.
freaking loved it, dude. You want to talk about, spiritual moments, for want of a better term? There's nothing more spiritual than lying on your back in a burning building, watching the fire roll over your head and knowing how close you are to your creator, and thinking to yourself, I can change this whole environment in a split second just by opening up the line on the hose a couple of times. And the whole like the control of it, the fear of it, the service of it, you know, it was a drug for me. It was an adrenaline drug. Again, though, big manly environment, you know, a lot of challenges in there. But the biggest thing for me was I bought my blue collar financial illiteracy with me, right? I was really good at spending money. I was not very good at managing money. MasterCard and Visa became my very, very best friends. I'm keeping up with the Joneses. I got to get the new car. And all I knew from my father's education to me was if you wanted to earn more money, then you had to trade more time. That was all I knew, right? I knew that some of my boys in the firehouse were doing construction on the outside. And, you know, one guy was laying carpet and blah, blah, blah. I knew all of that, but I didn't see a way to change my life. And I was working the fire department. I was working my second full-time job because I started my own little construction company. I was the last one to get paid in that because I had no business acumen. And then nights and weekends, I worked retail security. I was a part-time cop at like
nice.
Bradley's department store. Yeah, yeah. And at the end of the day, I was a sick, angry, beaten fucking man, dude. Yeah. That's what I was. My spirit was gone. It was gone. I refinanced my house 3 times going into the housing crash because assholes around me said, you're a firefighter, you deserve to refinance. I didn't know that I was paying 12 points on a loan. I didn't know that I was going into a 1, 3, 5-year arm. It was going to take me from, you know, 3% to 6% to 9% to 12% in 18 months. Wow. Making my mortgage payments go from, you know, $1,000 a month to $3,000 a month. I'm a month-to-month donkey, dude. I don't know anything, right? And I bought all of that with me into the fire service, and it became the catalyst that moved me to where I am today. So I've seen the dark side of real estate as well as the lighter side of it for sure.
When did you hit the financial wall, or did you hit a financial wall?
I did. 2008, 9, 10. My house was in pre-foreclosure. I was carrying about $75,000 in unsecured credit card debt. My marriage had ended. I'd lost my house, my second wife, my marriage was over. God was good. I met my now wife, Mary Beth. She's a labor and delivery nurse, and I was a paramedic in training with the fire department. But I was done. I was absolutely done. Some other personal things with family were all coming and manifesting to a head. And it was the closest I came to picking up a drink in the past 30, 33 years, 34 in January. And I remember sitting in my pickup truck and I'm screaming and shouting at God. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. Sitting in my pickup truck and I'm pounding on the dashboard and I'm like, what's going on? Like, I want to wrestle the big guy. You know what I mean? Like, I want to wrestle God and I want to kick his ass is how I felt.
Yeah.
And you know you're not going to win that fight. And I'm like, I don't lie, I don't cheat, I don't steal. I've been the first guy in the fire, I've been the last one out. I've been a man among men, a worker among workers. What? Right? Help. And I swear as I'm just going now, commercial came on the radio, teach me foreclosure, a free 1.5-hour seminar coming to your neck of the woods. And it was the old Whitney organization, which is now the Rich Dad organization, which was the legacy organization. And I'm like, well, that wasn't very subtle, was it? You know, like a commercial on a freaking radio. Delivered it loud and clear. It was almost like, hey, stupid, here's the plan. Are you going to follow it? You know, it almost felt like that. And that's where it started, dude. I went on this quest for real estate, and I went all in. Same way I fought a fire. Same way I fought a fire. If we're going all in. We're not going to half measure any of this stuff. And that's where the turn was for me, was right there. And I saved my house. Short sailed it myself.
Nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So as you got into this, I'm sure it took a while before you moved from your day job to real estate, right? I mean, because you didn't have money built up, so you had to work this on the side, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So the benefit is in the fire service, you know, we work 4 on, 4 off, 4 days, 4 nights, 2 days, 2 nights, 4 days off. So there's like a 6-day span from 9 to 5 where you can do something else, right? And I began to allocate time and really restructure my thinking. And it was my thinking first, dude. It really was. I read The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and I believed them. They said to me, so a man thinketh, so he becomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is biblical. What you think about, you bring about. Do you know how to manifest? And I'm like, can this shit be real? Like,
Right.
my blue collar background is fighting everything that I'm learning. And it was a 6 to 8 to 1 year mental transformation. And I was $27,000 additional credit card debt on my wife's credit cards for our real estate education afterwards, for 5 real estate classes. But what happened was, and this is critical, this is a pivotal point for anybody, as much as it was for me, was the people I began to listen to and hang out with changed.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again. The people I began to listen to and hang out with changed. Therefore, I learned things like the 5 people you hang around with the most is how you will be influenced financially, geopolitically, whatever influence you can think of. It's the 5 people which is, and I don't want to go off on a massive tangent, which is why it's such a divide today between, CNN and Fox News.
Right.
It's like, how much more classic do you want to get? I go between those 2 channels just to giggle. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I became a seminar junkie, dude. Like, I would spend every $1,000 extra I could on my education. And the true turn for me was around 2 years. Like, I did my first, we were talking about it before we started recording, I did my first wholesale transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to control a piece of real estate. And I did it with a bank-owned property, which they said you couldn't do back then. But once you learn contractual paperwork and a little bit of skill and a little bit of knowledge that's actually implemented, magic happens. So I control a bank-owned property with a contract, and I sell that contract to another investor. And there was $5,000 left on the table for me. $5,000. You got to remember, my take-home pay from the fire department after child support, union dues, health insurance, all the other crap that they took out of there. I've got check somewhere, a stub somewhere. It was like $188, almost $200 a week is what I was taking home.
Okay.
And I got a check. I got a check in my hand for $5,000.
That's like 25 weeks of pay. It's crazy.
I come out of this attorney's office. It's October. It's a misty, damp, cold October afternoon, evening, about 5 o'clock. It's getting dark. And I got a check in my hand. And it was almost and this sounds terrible in the selling of equating spirituality and money, but it was the time and the effort that goes into acquiring that capital. And I'm standing on this sidewalk, and I'm thinking to myself, this cannot be a legal transaction. I didn't own the house. I didn't trade hours and hours and hours of time to learn how to do this. And I've got a real check in my hand from a real attorney's office for $5,000.
Yeah.
And I was looking for the sedans, bro. I'm looking for the blue lights.
Well, it's just at that
crazy.
point, you've got 44 years of wiring, right? I'm guessing you were about 44 years old at the time.
Late 30, 40s. Yeah, early 40s. Yeah.
And it's all of this wiring, all of the, from your parents to the south side of the UK to moving over there, to being a firefighter, to watching those guys do carpentry, to all of a sudden, maybe it can be easier, right? Like, maybe you can make $5,000 by being smarter and not necessarily working harder, and like that. It's fucking with your whole reality.
Yeah. And here's the caveat to that. Once you do that, there ain't anybody ever can say you can't do it. Right. I called it a shut up check. And there was a check I took to everybody who said I couldn't do it. I showed it to him, and I said, "Shut up." Look at that check. Shut up. Right. So shut up check. And it snowballed from there. One deal after another. And what really put me in a position to be on this call with you today, right, was I went to an event, and it was a captain from the LA Fire Department. It was a real estate, multi-speaker real estate event. Everybody was selling bullshit in a box for $1,000. There was maybe 10 speakers at this event. And this guy gets up there, and he was an LA fire captain who had moved into real estate. And his incredible offer was he was selling you website templates for $5,000, right? And he got up on stage to do this hour and 20-minute presentation. If you've ever been to a multi-speaker event, you know what I'm talking about. And he's up there, and he's trying to be funny and failing. He's trying to be charismatic and failing. He's trying to be engaging and failing. So he fails miserably in my mind in the presentation, and yet he still does very, very well. There's, 50, 60, 100 people back there throwing credit cards at a table to get charged $1,000. So he comes off the stage, and I was one of the guys that bought the website. I'm a buyer. I'm always a buyer, right? And I go up to him and I said, "Hey, man, I'm Dave, blah, blah, blah. I'm a firefighter. You're a firefighter." He goes, "Oh, yeah, nice to meet you." And he's got the ego, right? He's got the attitude because he's the guru.
Yeah, he's busy.
And I said to him, "I got to tell you something, bud." He goes, "What?" I go, "Your comedy sucks, dude." So I slap him into reality, right? And he goes, "What?" I go, "Your comedy sucks." He goes, "Who are you?" I go, "I'm a firefighter." I go, "But I also did stand-up comedy in the pubs and clubs in London. You can't be laughing at your own punchline before you told it to us, man. It's timing." So the guy looks at me, Ken. He goes, "You're my new comedy coach." I go, "What?" He goes, "You're my new comedy coach. Listen," he says, "I'm going to give you $1,500. I'm going to fly you down to Florida for 3 days and put you up in the hotel where the event is." He said, "And I want you to take notes and help me with my presentation and my comedy." So I go to Mary Beth, my wife, right? And I'm like, I don't know if this cat's for real, but he said he's going to give me $1,500. That's $500 a day. And I used to get $200 a week, right?
Sure.
So I got into the education space, and I find myself now I'm hanging around with these B-level and C-level gurus. And now you'll understand why I am so disengaged and so wishful that there is failures in this marketplace, because I got to be on the other side.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting at a Texas Day Brazil in Orlando, Florida, with about 20 of these guys, 15 of these guys, all sitting around a table, and they're all talking about how well they've done at the event, right? This guy says he closed this. This one says he closed that. Did you see the way I closed this one and that one? And blah, 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 blah. And it's all big swinging dick. Who's the biggest dog in the party? And then they start talking about watches, right? And this one guy goes, "Look at this. This is my $120,000 Rolex." And this other guy's talking about, "I've got a platinum bracelet and a Rolex whatever watch. And, the paupers that we spoke to today will never be able to afford these." And, like that mental separation. So as they're talking about watches, Mary Beth had bought me a really nice new Timex to go with the suit that didn't fit, because she knew I was going to be out there speaking and doing a little bit of MC work. And in that moment of insanity, I covered up my watch because I wasn't worthy, was my internal dialogue, right? And then God showed up again, and there was a screaming voice in my head. And it was basically, fuck you, right? These guys, 90% of these guys wouldn't have the balls to do the things that I've done.
Right.
90% of these guys wouldn't have the skill sets to go into a medic bag and pull the right drug at the right time and save a life. None of these guys know how to get an IV in the scalp of a 3-month-old baby, right? These guys don't know how to do this stuff. And for me, it was a defining moment where I said, if I can in any way impact the education space for a positive, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it however I can. I don't want to hurt anybody else, either in the industry or out of the industry. But if I can be some kind of beacon for good, I'll do it. And I became a hired gun, like a speaker who could pretty much, close any service or education package because people resonated with truth. They resonated with the story. They resonated with the hardships and the successes. And that moved me into spaces with guys like Russell Brunson, Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Some of the good heavy hitters. Yeah. And Russell Brunson was the guy who sent out an email to me and a couple of other guys. We were kind of like in a little group back then. And he says, Dave, you're a funny bastard. You should apply for this TV show. So this is 2010, 11, 12, around that period of time. Real estate was cancer back then. I mean,
Right.
nobody was touching anything. He said, you're a funny bastard. He said, with the firefighter thing, you should be doing that, blah, 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 blah. So I sent in an application to this production company. I loaded it with profanity because I knew from Brunson, I got to separate myself from the pack.
Right.
If all you want is a piece of paper and an name of company, who's on your team, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, go fuck yourself. LLC was the name of the company, and the catchphrase on the bottom. I put in there. I said, I'm Dave, a firefighter. I do real estate the same way I do firefighting. When everybody else goes running out, we go running in. But I got
So
all the
Boston. The whole thing is so Boston.
yeah. So Boston. It's all bulldog, right?
Yeah.
So the catchphrase on the bottom was don't call me. Get on a plane, train, or automobile, you prick, and let's go, baby, go. Right. So I press send on this application. 15 minutes, I get a 212 area code. I know it's New York.
Yeah.
Right. So I pick up the phone. I go, hey, asshole, I thought I told you not to call me. And I hang up the phone.
Did you premeditate that? Did you go
no, 90% of what I do is in the moment, right? It's all God.
So funny.
It's all God. And I'm like, oh, please call back. I'm like, internally, I'm like, you just screwed it all up. So they call back again, and the kid's laughing his ass off. He goes, you're either a lunatic or a genius. He said, I'm not sure which. I said, I'm both, you prick. Let's go. What are we doing? Let's go make a TV show. I got stuff. And that's how Flipping Boston started. They came out, they shot a little demo reel. A&E Network picked it up. My partner at the time, Peter, who was on the show with me, he wasn't even really my partner. He was just a guy that I borrowed some money from and done some work with. I called him up. I said, hey, shitface, you got to come over here. He goes, why? What's up? I said, you got to come over to the house where we're doing the work. I said, I got a production company from New York. We're going to be on a reality TV show. I said, you're Pete the Greek. I said, you're Pete the Greek with all the money and the artistic interpretations. I'm going to be the Bulldog GC. And that was it. That's where it started, dude. That's where
How many seasons? You guys did like four seasons?
Yeah, 4 seasons. We did 29 episodes. The only reason they stopped doing it is they had a lawsuit with the intellectual property of that show from a prior show that was out there. And they lost a $6 million lawsuit to the guy who created the intellectual property of flipping houses on a TV show for A&E.
Got it.
So they had to unwind us, but to be frank with you, it ran its course for me. I was done. I wasn't enjoying it, and I made a commitment when I went from working for somebody else to creating something for myself, my family, and anybody around me. I made a commitment. If I wasn't having fun, I wasn't going to do it.
Right.
And I try and stand by that as much as I can today. I'm 57, dude. If I ain't having fun, I don't want to play.
So what's happening now, like since the show? Because I know you've got a private equity firm. I know you're So tell me what's happening now.
So we kind of, the show unwound. We flipped a few more houses, did some more education for a while, and then in 2000 and what was it? 2000 and when was COVID?
2020.
20. So late 2019, I started a hard money lending business. I was working on a $50 million line of credit with a company out of New York, and it was a 3 to 5 day rip on the note. So we process the note, generate the hard money loan, and then sell the loans back to New York so we could keep on turning the capital over. So they were the line of credit, and then we had takeout partners. 2 months in building the business, we get it automated, systematized. It was great. We had 16 million in deal flow in the pipe, 7 loan originators, 8 loan originators, 2 in California, 6 out here. And I'm like, this is going to be good. This is it. I found my next groove.
Yeah, it seems like it's automated, almost like a little machine, right?
It was. It was an automated machine. My young partner, Eric Wilson, who's off the charts genius, just figured out the marketing funnels for it. It was beautiful. It was cut and paste.
Yeah.
And I'm out of business in 24 hours because of COVID, because the line of credit said, we're done. We're not doing anything anymore. There was the knee-jerk reaction to it. And I'm like, are you shitting me? And again, another moment. I got to have a conversation. What's up? What's up? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I took a little breather, and my partner's Walter Novicki, who's down in Florida, who I met on the education space. He was a trainer on the back end for large commercial real estate transactions for people who wanted to learn multifamily investing, syndicating commercial deals. Walter had done probably 30 deals himself. He probably had raised in the region of 250 million in private equity. Yeah, but he was a one-man band. So he and I got on the blower. He said, "What are you doing now? COVID's here." I said, "I don't know. What are you doing?" He said, "Well, we're not participating in COVID in Florida." He said, we don't buy into that. I'm like, okay. He said, I think there's going to be an opportunity for some distressed assets. He said, "Why don't you raise the money and I'll put the team together and we'll bring in Eric for the systems and the operations." And that's what we did. We created Freedom Venture Investments. We're a private equity firm. I probably got anywhere between 150 to 250 million in development work in the pipeline in various phases in Florida. So we're in Southwest Florida, Cape Coral, Fort Myers. Our investors will put capital with us in multifamily investments. Ground up development is where we're focusing our attention right now, because even the assets that are existing are still overpriced, even in a distressed market. So we'll take an accredited investor. We'll bring their capital into the deals. They've got an expectation of a targeted return anywhere between 12 to 16% cash on cash over the life of the investment. They look anywhere between a 1.6 to a 3.2 equity multiple, depending on the risk profile that the deal offers. So, if you're coming in on the land with us, then you've got a longer run of that capital without any cash flow while we entitle and start the process. But they're looking at a nice targeted return up to 4x on some of the the underwriting that we put together. So that's where I'm at today, man. I kind of raise money. I'm still doing a little bit of speaking. I'm working with a couple of different groups where I'll go out and share this same story, but in front of 2,000 people or 200 people instead of just me and you shooting the breeze. But life is good, man. I'm a blessed guy. I really am. It's not easy. I'd be a lying sakadudu kaka if I told you it was easy. It's not. I'm on my knees looking for help every day. But I am blessed. It's been a heck of a journey, brother. It's been
You're still in Boston?
Journey. Still in Boston. Yeah. I live in one of the episodes on Flipping Boston was called King of the Castle. And the whole storyline was, Dave wanted to buy this big house and flip it. And Pete wanted Dave and his family to move into it because it fit all the criteria. My boys were little, right? So I'm still in that house.
Oh, cool.
I'm still in that house. Yeah. Still king of the castle.
I'm not too far. When you mentioned 212, that's my area code. So we just moved out of the city. We're in a little town called Nyack, but maybe 3-4 hours from you. So not too far.
Oh, dude, we're not far. We'll meet in the middle. We'll break bread. For sure. 100%. 100%. I'll tell you my story about playing soccer in Poughkeepsie in Albany when I was 15 years old. I got stories, man. It's good.
I got a few too. I was in the Army and did a Armed Forces Day in Poughkeepsie. And I was like, I'm never coming back to this shithole. And now I live like 45 minutes from it. So
there you go.
Right down the street. Hey,
I lived in Greenwich Village. I lived on Christopher Street.
Oh yeah,
my first wife. That's where her father was. And I'm like, I love this town, man. They deliver me bacon and eggs at 4:00 in the morning and beer. How sweet it is.
Perfect for a young alcoholic. Nothing better.
Sure.
Dude, it was so good to get to meet you. And we're going to put all the ways to contact you in our show notes. Love your stories. Love who you are. Really, really enjoyed this.
Too.
Yeah. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Take care, man.
Take care.